What's up, everybody? It's your boy Mike Rashid.
Party to our body. Thursday afternoon, reflection time.
Reflection. What are you reflecting on, Sean? I know you've been having a lot on your mind lately.
Yeah. Well, we started talking about this the other day at the gym, and it's a conversation that is particularly about us, but then one that's relevant socially as well. And that is like this idea of where you come from. And we'll get into why that's so relevant, but knowing where you come from, like immediately with your family, and then, you know, how far that reaches backwards and the history of what led to you being in the position where you are, I think is very important to all of us for having this sense of belonging. Because people wonder, why are we here on earth and what are we doing here and what's the purpose of our lives? That's even more abstract than what I'm talking about. Just knowing what are the 2 or 3 people who came before you that literally created you. Like your parents, you know, did the deed that resulted in you being born, and then their parents did that deed for them, and et cetera. Knowing that about yourself, I think it's valuable. Do you?
100%. Well, yes and no. I think it depends on your level of existence, your level of consciousness, your level of existence. So what I mean by that, they say ignorance is bliss, right? So I get that. That makes a lot of sense. When you don't... Let's say, you know, you just existing, happy, going to work or whatever you do for a living. You make your money, you go home, you relax, you have your days off. You're not really focused on anything else but your everyday, day-to-day things, right? You may not be conscious of where you're from or where the generation or 2 or 3 before you are from, because most people here in this country are from somewhere else, right? The United States is a new country. So it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. But it does when you are kind of on that level to where you think about these things and it kind of affects you. What about you? Where are you at? Does it affect you? Does it matter to you?
When I was young, we talked about this in one of our first podcasts, it affected me negatively where I was from. You know, my parents are both first-generation immigrants. They both moved here from another country, from Iran. And they weren't refugees or anything like that. They both moved here. My dad on his own, you know, with absolutely nothing, literally in poverty, with nothing other than his clothes. And my mom, you know, was from a little bit more affluent of a family, not billionaires or millionaires, but like enough that they could help send their kids here to go to school because they wanted them to be educated in the U.S. and eventually live here. So they came in very different ways, but nonetheless, they were displaced from their country by choice. Though they moved here and into a whole new culture. And
what time period was this? What years?
It must have been in the 70s when they both moved here. So they both moved here at relatively the same age.
That's from Iran.
From Iran, straight here to the U.S., different parts of the U.S. My mom went to Missouri. My dad came out to California.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Missouri?
Yeah, Missouri, yeah.
Missouri. Don't they say Missouri?
They probably do over there. I've never said that.
But that's crazy to think Missouri or whatever.
Right.
From Iran to there.
Exactly. And so they both moved
Did you
here.
talk about how people treated her? Was it cool or?
Well, it was cool for a while because when they moved here, we were having good relations. The U.S. and Iran, where they were actually very close allies.
Then the 80s came.
Right. So this was before all that when they moved here. They moved here when things were awesome. So a lot of people from here used to go to Iran on vacation and vice versa. And the U.S. and Iran were on such good terms that the U.S. gave the Shah, or like the ruler of Iran at the time, they gave him a U.S. printing press as a sign of their affection and a token of their relationship. Like here you can literally print your own money if you want. Of course they didn't.
Wow.
They don't expect them to, but like that's a big deal.
Right.
They don't do that.
It's a grand gesture.
Yeah, just a gesture of like, hey, this is how close our country is. And so that was back when Iran was highly westernized and it was really following a lot of U.S. trends. So things were different. But fast forward, 25 years. 9/11 has happened. The political climate is very different in Iran. It's now...
Well, even before that, it got really volatile in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There was a hostage situation, but that had all cooled. Everything goes in cycles. That had all cooled off again, and more or less people had not forgotten, but like it was not really a big deal in the news cycle, and certainly not amongst kids. So when I was little, it wasn't a big deal. I was in like 6th grade or something when 9/11 happened. And then all of a sudden, anyone and everyone who was Muslim or associated with being Muslim or just from anywhere in the Middle East was good enough. You were catching the fire from people where you almost felt embarrassed about it because there was nothing you were going to say that was going to change their mind because they've been told things by their parents and they've heard things in the media and we're all kids, so you can't be explained of it. So to wrap that up, when I was little, I was embarrassed of where I came from in the sense that it was hard for me to explain to people, no, like this is not how my family is. We're not even Muslim in the first place, at all. But even if we were, there's nothing wrong with that. There's people on in my dad and mom sides of the family who are Muslim, who practice, and they live beautiful, fulfilling, and amazingly righteous lives where they do everything to help people and they do nothing to harm anyone. So even if they were Muslim, no big deal there. But like just to try and figure out my place was tough for me when I was little. But that's how I grew up. But now it's swung all the way around to where I'm super proud of it, and not in the way that I wave a flag around or have one tattooed on my arm, but it's part of me because all those traditions that came from Iran, my parents brought them here, and now I recognize the way that they raised me, the foods that we ate, even them teaching me the language. All these things, they've contributed to who I am, for the better or for the worse, but I think it's all for the better. I love everything about it, and so I hope that everyone could experience some level of that.
Iran has a really rich history, man. The Persian Empire was a superpower. I'm really into history, especially military history. I love that shit. And that was a fascinating piece of time period, And, they, to where I'm from. So I seen a family tree a while ago on my grandparents' side, on my grandmother's side. Doing my genealogy, my people are from Ghana, right? Which is the west coast of Africa, the Ivory Coast. You have Ghana. Most black people in America are from Ghana, the Gambia, Nigeria, those places that's on the coast, because the transatlantic slave trade was, of course, from the western tip of Africa across the Atlantic Ocean. So they had to get us people close to that area, which is a beautiful part of the world. Beaches, crazy, but Africa, the continent of Africa, and has been ravished and destabilized. There was a time when, it's funny, I'm glad we're talking about this. People talk about history, and we've talked about this a lot. A lot of people think that black people's history started with slavery, like that was it. Like we were just some bush people, snatched us up, brought us out here. No, that wasn't the case. There was slavery all throughout the world, in Africa and other places. Africans would enslave other Africans, but that was any country. That was a normal thing. The difference between that and what we had in the Americas was the harsh conditions, taking people from across the world, and just the brutality, like it was a Holocaust, Millions of people died on the journey. The journey was horrible. Think about it. We ride first class to like across the world, and we're complaining about that. Imagine being in a boat, in the bowels of the boat, a wooden boat, like an ark, and we're merchandise at this point. They need as much merchandise as possible. So packed in like sardines, like this, right? Whoever I'm facing, I have to urine on, and they're probably defecating on me, and that's how it was, right? It was horrible, There's a movie called Roots. I would ask everybody to watch that, Roots, Amistad, these kind of movies. But I wish we had movies that predate that, right? Because we had vast wealth, amazing culture, mathematics, science, all of that. The Greeks and Romans were coming to Africa to learn from the scholars. But these things are never really talked about, for whatever reason. We talked about different sculptures and that were defaced, blowing noses off of the pharaohs and all of that stuff. Because that's a clear, those things were colored beautifully back then. It wasn't like sandy, but it's been weathered and eroded over time. But if the features were there, you could clearly see what the people looked like, They made sure they got those noses off of there. Why that? You know what I mean? But anyway, my people, we're from Ghana. Come here. Half of my family, during the Americas, from the South, my grandparents on my father's side were from the Caribbean islands. My grandfather's parents were from the Dominican Republic. My grandmother's parents were from Trinidad and Tobago. That wasn't in America, but it was still the same stuff going on there as well, slavery. Matter of fact, the route went to the Caribbean first, then up to like Florida, Georgia, and the rest of the southern part of the East Coast of America. So, we went through hundreds of years of that. There was no teaching of culture. We would get tongues cut out, ears cut off. Men would get their dicks cut off, like castrated. Women would get raped in front of their husbands, It was bad, Even little things like, it's funny because bodybuilding, if you know the history of slavery, it's kind of like bodybuilding. They would have what's called a picnic. You gotta do some research. You know what a picnic is? Mm-mm. This is where you go to pick a nigga. Picnic. So it was a family thing, and they would go and auction it was a slavery auction. They would bring them out, strong-looking dudes, oil them up, they look stronger. You know what I'm saying? And they would bid and buy property. You know what I mean? So that was a thing. You know what I'm saying? And excuse me. This, I'm not gonna lie, this kind of like chokes me up a little bit. Not like to that extent, but it's just talking about it. It's embarrassing and it's so hurtful because there's people who they want to reduce it to where it's not that big of a deal. Long time ago, it wasn't that long ago.
And this is why I think it is a big deal, because of this desire I have for everyone to know about where they came from and have some pride in it, because I think it's a great way for us all to realize that we have greatness in us, because no matter what country you talk about, there is some history to it, and there is some demonstration most likely of something awesome that happened there. And it's just a good thing for us to all move forward with knowing that wherever we came from, that we know about, because ultimately we're all human beings. But wherever, our ancestors were culturally from, whatever piece of dirt that they hailed from, great things happened there. And that's inside of you. We all want to belong to something. I know we like belonging to this team that we work with here. We like working together. Belonging, I think, is a really fucking important thing. I think it in our fragile human lives, it's a big part of feeling whole and feeling happy is belonging to something. And that was taken away from people who were part of the slave trade and other people as well, other cultures. But I think this is such a systematic demonstration of it to the level that really hasn't, to my knowledge, been carried out. Definitely not in recent history, where a group of persons were enslaved, but then also stripped of their culture. And that happened by bringing them across the Atlantic. And then, like you said, cutting out tongues, forbidding reading and writing, and literally in a generation's time, killing off the culture. And then from that point on, the only culture anyone knew to the large extent was you are a slave. That is your origins. That's all you are, and that's all you've ever been.
And it went like, okay, let's say, okay, now slavery's abolished. You're good. Okay, not really. There's a lot of political reasons why it was outlawed, right? So then they changed the term to indentured servants. So that meant, because you're not going to be, first of all, we're not treated fair now. So imagine how we were treated back then when we're quote unquote free. So you're indentured servant. So you get to stay on your master's land and you work. And that covers your rent. That was your pay. Okay, wow, great. Or 5 cents a week or something ridiculous. You know what I mean? Not all slave masters were like that though. Some paid decent, and some were able to some slaves were able to save up, move, and even during slavery, some slaves were able to save up enough to buy their own freedom because they may have had a owner who was decent and helped them, position themselves out of that condition. But nonetheless, for the most part, it was horrible. It was atrocious. So here's the thing. Okay, so all of this time passed, and it's kind of like it gets uglier, because it's more hidden. It's not as overt in certain places, most places. Racism, what you know as racism, like nigger this and blah, 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 is really low level shit. You know what I'm saying? Is low, like bunking people, like no decent people are dealing with other people like that. However, it's dealt with on a very systemic way, Let me back it up a little bit. Once we were quote unquote free and then time went on, we still carried the names. We didn't know our original names. We had no idea. So we had Jones and Johnsons and Smiths. Those are not African names. Those are names of the people who owned us, right? So we carried their names. So it was a huge movement in the 60s. It was different factions of civil rights. And then you had Malcolm X, who was more radical, right, at the time. And he was like, we're dropping the name. We don't know our name, so name yourself X until you figure out, you choose your own name. And I respect that. Because at that time, blacks, especially black men, were so decimated. There's a lot of laws targeting black men, you know what I mean, to take us off the streets, just get us out of there, breaking up black families. So we had no confidence. Even to this day, to a certain extent, we don't have confidence. So you needed somebody saying like, you're a god, you're this, you're that, you're powerful, you come from kings. And then I hear, I got a lot of respect for Joe Rogan. I love Joe Rogan. He was talking on his podcast. He's like, well, they all wasn't kings. It's like, no shit, bro. However, saying that you're king is giving somebody some confidence, like letting them know, like, yo, you come from a great history, The richest man to date was an African. I believe he's from Ghana, Muna Musa Kita. His wealth adjusted, when you adjust to inflation, $400 billion. His caravans were so vast, when he would make pilgrimage to Mecca, he would destabilize the economies in the places that he traveled through, spending so much money, right? Tinkaminen, he was a king of Ghana. These guys weren't like famous for being warlords. They were famous for bringing prosperity to their regions, wealth. You know what I mean? And these are things that are never discussed in school books or nothing. Black history should be talking about that, not just Rosa Parks.
And what we're taught today is not that. We're taught, from my recollections in school, and granted it may have changed, but I doubt it. My only recollections of black history are things talking about slavery, and then you have like Frederick Douglass being one of the primary and first influential black men, right? Somebody was talking about, I think it was Dave Chappelle was talking about him being the first black man that was invited to the White House, and they didn't let him in until he was escorted in by the president himself. These are the things that we're taught as non-black people are black history. And then these are the same things that young black children are taught. And so it just continues this cycle of an entirely lost culture. And having, realized for myself how important that culture can be if you embrace it, I really want to see and be a part of all these young black men and women, young kids like Elijah, I want them to know about it. I want them to know that's inside of them. That's where they came from. And that's what they can, move towards. It's not just what's been done in the last 50 years or last 2 generations. Luckily, he's got a good example to try and strive for and beat, but not everyone does. Mm-hmm. Not everyone has that. Not every kid has a dad like you. So if they didn't, I don't want them to think that's what they have to be as well. Right. I want them to know that they have all the likelihood of being successful because where they come from has some greatness in it. It may not have been the generation prior to them, mm-hmm. but it's in them. They can do it.
Right. 100%, and to learn to do research about these people and to do research about these different countries in Africa. And just like we were talking about, we're called African Americans, which is kind of insulting because Africa's a continent.
It's so crazy.
It's a continent.
That's not done to any other culture.
It's not just a continent. It's one of the biggest continents on the planet, right? So, okay, just like you have Mexican American, Italian American, these are countries. It's very specific where these people come from. So it's not like we should do our own research and find out where we're from and represent that. Nigerian American.
For anyone out there who doubts that black people in America have some level of disadvantage, because many people do, they doubt that to be a fact.
Yeah.
If you doubt that, ask yourself why it is that you know nothing about African history, right? Other than Egypt, which is positioned to not be black somehow. It's positioned to be like just tan folks, mm-hmm. right? They're not thought to be African.
Right.
They sold you when you were in school. They sold you that Egyptian people were just tan white people because that's what I remember.
And I mean, look at the movies, bro. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra.
Right. And then hold on one second. And then ask yourself why it is African American and why isn't it exactly what country they're from and then American, just like everywhere else in the world. You don't hear it being called.
Here's the thing. It was like hush them up, African American. Listen, my white friends out there, my white colleagues, my comrades out there. I'm with y'all. Look. I'm not a racist person by any means, but I'm also not some sucker that don't know his history, and I'm not gonna act like I don't know my history. When this is brought up with white people, sometimes it's very uncomfortable. Like if I do something to offend you and you tell me, I don't want to hear that shit. Me, the person I am, I do want to hear it because I don't ever want to do it again. I want to correct it. But when I say I don't want to, most people don't want to hear that, So it goes into defensive mode real fast, and this is reverse racism. Reverse racism when you bring up racism. I'm like, huh? No, I'm not. That's not what we're doing. I know there's a big movement. White guys feel like they're being picked on because of the term white privilege and this, that, and the third. And it's like, bro, it is white privilege. So it is what it is. If I was a white man, I would embrace my privilege and I got it. Yeah, I'm not going to act like it ain't there. You know what I'm saying? It is. But you don't have to act like it's not and that you're a victim. It's not. That's not what anyone is doing. It's just a cry for like, damn, how can we even the playing field because we're so far behind? We start in a fucking deficit. A huge deficit, you know what I mean? So it's
even just a deficit of identity.
That alone,
you know what I mean?
That alone, and that's like when you hear, people talk about, I'm Italian American or whatever American, and they're proud of their heritage and they know they're well versed on it. There's plenty of information about it, easily available, easily accessible. That is not provided in the black community. It's not. So, and it's very unfortunate. Because here's the thing, the United States is a great nation. It is so great because it's a nation of immigrants, of people from all over the world. That's why it's so unique. It's so cool. People look different. If you look at the Persian Empire, if you look at the Egyptian Empire, the Romans, the Greeks, whoever was reigning at the time, it wasn't like they didn't stay still in their place. No, they moved out and it was through conquering, but they're still embracing elements of these different places. Who was it? Cleopatra married Caesar. That was a power move. Two great fucking nations coming together. You know what I'm saying? Not just, no, we stand here, staying to ourselves, and this is it. This is all it is. You and I have been around the world. We've been in different countries. I know me, from my experience, everything is great, it's cool, but it ain't nothing like here, like America, because it's so diverse, so dynamic. I love that shit. I love it. So, but when you go to everywhere else, it's just that. It's just that. It's just that. This place is different because you have all of this. And what I'm saying is this: we all are fucking brothers and sisters at the end of the day. We look different because we come from different parts of the world. It's just adaptation.
That's it. To become fit for survival.
Exactly. So we're not different types of humans. You're not a Cro-Magnon and a Homo sapien and a
we're not even like poodles and Yorkies. We're not even that.
It's different shades, different colors. So
we're literally all the same type of dog, just different colors of dog.
Here's the thing: you could call me nigga, you can not like black people, yada 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 yada, all of that shit. But if I see somebody unjustly trying to bust your head open, I'm going to stop it from happening. Will you still think I'm a nigga and I'm a this and I'm a that? You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to tell y'all this too. Y'all could call me nigga. I'm going to call you a nigga back. It doesn't bother me. And I'm going to tell black people out there, don't let that word take you off of your square. Don't let somebody calling you a name hurt your feelings. Because if somebody got to call you a name to hurt your feelings, to hurt you, that's unfortunate for them. It's like a child. You poo-poo head, you nigger, is the same. You that's the best you can do. You can call me a name. So I don't give a fuck. That's just a word. And I take the power out of that word. And I'll freely use it to call whoever I want to call that. Because it don't apply to me when you try to say it in a derogatory way. Don't let that shit bother you. It's just a fucking word. Don't let nothing bother you. I was having a conversation with someone this morning about Kanye West, about music, right? We're talking about artists, and Kanye came up, and this person was like, I only like Kanye up to the Graduation album. I'm like, why is that? I already knew where they was going. Well, I just don't, his political views, I just can't fuck with it. We just don't agree. I'm like, okay, let's talk about the Trump thing. I said, personally, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna tell you why. You will always have half the country hating the president, half the country loving it. That's gonna always be the case. Here's the thing, which is kind of a good thing. Now here's the thing. Not once in my life, since I've been an adult, have any president had any impact on my life, any meaningful impact on my life. I was super happy when Obama was elected because somebody that looked like me got to that highest position. But other than that, there's no change from before that. I thought he was a smooth, suave dude, all of that shit. But other than that, I really don't give a fuck. Because I feel like all of these dudes, from the left and the right, they all doing the same shit, right? They're speaking for their marketing. And they got to represent a team to get votes, to win. That's it. Donald Trump, the things that he ran on, the conservative values. Do anybody really think because I remember hearing him mention the Bible verses and, the guns. Do anybody think that he cares about church or guns or abortion? He probably got more abortions than everybody out here put together. You know what I'm saying? He don't give a fuck about none of this shit. He probably don't mean none of the shit. He's saying what the people who vote for him want him to say. He's speaking for them. You know what I'm saying? He's speaking for the people who he need votes from. That's it. That's a billionaire. He don't relate to the average person. He's been rich all his life. He never has. Never has related to the average Joe. He don't care. None of them care. I'm not just shitting on him. None of them give a fuck. If anything, I'm like, learn from him. That's marketing 101, the red hat MAGA. That's marketing like a motherfucker. He got everybody emotional. Either good emotion or bad emotion. And that makes things happen. Votes, whatever. And he's going to win again. Because the Democrats ain't doing what he's doing. You got to do it. Fight fire with fire. Call him names. I would call him names. I would go for him. I'll go for his jugular just like he does. But they're trying to, play the whatever. But here's the thing. Who cares? I don't care. What I care about is me being happy, you're my business partner, so making you proud in our business, making sure all of our people out here who work for us are happy, make sure my kids are good, my parents, my family, my little world. That's it. I don't care about what's said politically, this and that. The shit don't, until it start affecting my day-to-day, then I'll deal with it. But here's another thing. Instead of complaining all the time, I want people to get involved. Get involved. Get involved. Black people. If you know someone that's 18, don't really know what they're doing, talk to them about joining the police force, going to the military. These are good fucking occupations. And let's say there's a racist cop on the force. Let's say he get teamed up with a black dude. You really think he's going to be out there doing bullshit? Chances are he's not. Chances are he'll never utter a racist word around a person of a different color. You know what I'm saying? Because racism don't stand up in person. I've yet to have a racist encounter. You know what I'm saying? I'll welcome it. Like, come on. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is, like, we got to get involved. Black people be involved. Local politics. It started at the bottom in the communities, But I personally don't give a fuck about that shit. I don't want to be involved. I'm not going to let this shit stress me out because he say some goofy shit on TV. I don't give a fuck. It's fucking funny to me. You know what I mean? I don't take any of it serious. It's entertaining. It's on the news. These news want ratings. It's so stupid. And I really wish that Americans would be smarter. Or I know they're smart. I wish they would show it. Because they're letting these news channels where you got Fox on one side and it's CNBC or whatever the fuck, MSNBC on the other side, tugging at their emotions. They playing with y'all for ratings. They're saying the volatile shit. They're fucking with y'all, and y'all not even seeing through it. Fuck that. There's independent news sources out there. Don't buy into the shit if you want to focus on the news, because it's all bad information anyway. Bad news is what it should be called. Put people in a bad mood. Have them hating each other for shit that they really shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Because
make sure they keep watching to the next commercial break. Yeah.
Keep watching. It's ratings. These are businesses. If it wasn't, it would be very down the middle on every channel, right? It wouldn't be as exciting. But it's exciting, and it keeps up that fire in your belly. That shit causes cancer. That's stress. It got people uptight. I don't want to be uptight. You know what I'm saying?
And that's why we're big on doing what you can control right in your immediate circumstance. Like, you have way more power over your day-to-day life than you even realize, most people. You have the ability to change your life tomorrow, today, and the next day. Every moment from now on, you can change your life. The president is not going to do that for you. Whether it's the president that you wanted or the one that you have who's not the one you wanted.
None of them.
They still don't have the power to change your life the way that you do. Each of us do. So these things are very important.
Not to cut you off, but what they got to realize is ultimately you're just really happy that your team won. That's it. That's it.
And in this case, it doesn't even matter. Just like actually with the thing of pro sports or college sports even, it really doesn't matter if your team wins. I mean, you feel some joy, but there's nothing changes in your life. You're not really on the team. You didn't play. The only people it really affects is the people who's getting paid.
That's it.
So you're a fan. So don't be a political fan. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you're not even maxing out everything you could be doing in your own life. If you're a political fan or an armchair politician, that's a new term. I think we just made it up. You have the armchair quarterbacks who talk shit about athletes. Mm-hmm. Now we got the armchair politicians who do nothing but do a lot of talking.
I had somebody tell me, for the record, these tax breaks that people in certain tax brackets get, it benefits us. But this friend of mine, who's a conservative, it doesn't at all. But they're so, I'm like, I'm not even gonna go there, like, because these people don't really even know the ins and outs of the shit, of the things that affect their day-to-days. Because this person is not, abortion don't affect their fucking life, or weed is legal or not, or the border shit, you know what I'm saying? So, they're focused on things that don't even matter, and the things that did matter, they're not even looking at. But people don't want to know, because they only want to be right with what they feel. They want what they feel to be right, which is not the smartest thing, right? But however, I really do wish that Americans would be a little bit wiser, right? Think for themselves. Don't let these fucking news channels guide them where they want them to go. You're literally just getting guided. I don't care if it's Fox or CNN. You're getting guided. I don't want to hear any of that shit because it's all biased. You know what I mean? You're going to a station that's going to talk about the shit that you already think. You know what I mean? It's just not cool. I want to learn. I really want to learn. So I want to watch things that I'm going to learn from. Or I want to hear some really interesting conversations, thought-provoking things. So I seek that out. I don't seek things out that's going to make me angry. Now, if I happen to be coming across some information that hurts, I got to stomach that and internalize it and deal with it. But I'm not doing what they do. You know, the Fox, the CNN shit. I'm not doing it. I don't care. I don't want to. When people bring it up to me, I'm like, Or I'll respect them and listen, but I'm not listening. You're not gonna get a response. It's just all funny. It's funny to me. When I watch the shit, it's funny. It's like, damn, y'all eating this shit up.
Yeah.
These people,
true.
these are fucking, they're not actors, but they're kind of actors. You know what I mean? The newscasters, they know they need to be a little bit more.
They got to play a role. They have a side of the table that they sit on.
Yeah,
and they have a message to convey.
And be argumentative and ask those questions to keep people watching their show. That's job security. These people care about their bottom line, their fucking paycheck. And then it becomes a thing when somebody's getting paid doing something and it's good money, they really get into it. They really start believing it. I guarantee I can double, triple they pay on the other side, they'd be over there. Because it's all about survival. You know what I mean?
It is. And, you know, I know when we're with people and they want to discuss politics, it's not that I'm against it, but I would much rather spend time talking to people about their own lives and where and how they can improve their own circumstances without trying to get into the things that are beyond them. Like trying to focus your energy on politics, especially if you're not involved in politics. It's like you're spinning your wheels. We're talking for the sake of talking with no outcome.
We're not politicians.
Right. So
we're not well versed in it.
So I want to see people taking this responsibility. And this goes back to what we were saying about who you are and your history and culture. I want people to know about what is their own makeup and what has led to them and what they can be proud of and move forward with on their own. That's all positive to me. Just knowing about it and being proud and taking the steps forward to wherever you started, you want to make sure the generation coming after you goes further. So it doesn't matter if you started off awesome or you started off not so awesome. You still want to see improvement in the next generation. And so I want everyone who's listening to this, you know, not just people who are black, but everyone from every culture, be proud of who you are. Learn about yourself, not just where you came from, but learn about your weaknesses, your strengths, and your opportunities and your threats. That's how we analyze a business. It's called a SWOT analysis. Do a SWOT analysis on yourself. Learn about yourself and figure out how you're going to move forward to be a better person every day. If you do that, you're going to be on the right track. We know people who spend way too much time talking about politics when I know there's a lot to be done with themselves as people before they really worry about this external focus.
Right. And here's the thing. These people are not that we're spending time on discussing and being angry about. They're not doing anything for us, you know, in our communities. We got to do it ourselves. And I told my friend this also. I said, I'm worried about me being straight and being set up and my people. And then we can go out and do our own thing to help people out. We're not asking for help from nobody to do it. The government grant, we don't give a fuck about none of that. We don't want nothing from the government. It's there if we need it, I guess. The only thing I want from the government is protection with the police, you know, strong military. Other than that, I don't need anything. I'll get it myself, you know. But back to where we was getting to, we got to wrap it up. But, you know, it's good to have knowledge of self. Not a prideful, I'm better than you knowledge, because I'm not about that. It's just because what I am and what you are, we didn't do anything to qualify us to be that. It's luck. We just was born into these families. You know, so that's real goofy when people are so proud I'm this. motherfucker, you did nothing to be that. You know what I mean? Just by chance. So we should all be appreciative to be healthy, alive, but it is cool to know history. And like you said, not just your own history, but black people need to know our history and talk about it with our white friends. You know what I'm saying?
Because we educate each other.
We're
afraid of what we don't know, and we tend to be more comfortable with the things we do know.
Right.
And so the more we know about each other, the more comfortable we'll be.
And like the great philosopher Nas said, people fear what they don't understand, hate what they can't conquer. You know, so it's not, you know, you shouldn't hate what you can't conquer unless it's really bad, right? But fearing what you don't understand is something that's a fear that you can eliminate by trying to do what you can to understand it. You know, don't tell me, yeah, slavery's a long time ago. Ask me like, out of pure ignorance, why does it bother you? You're free. And give the opportunity for your black homie to break down why. You know what I'm saying? Or just go do some research. Go not from a source that's gonna be biased to what you feel. You know? Mm-hmm. So that's it, you know. But we gotta knock this African American shit out. We want to hear some Ghanaian Americans or some Nigerian Americans, some, you know, Gambian Americans and Egyptian Americans and shit like that. You know, because there's a lot of countries in Africa. It's a lot of fucking countries in Africa, man. It's a lot of countries in Africa.
And they all have a history that's going to be worth knowing about. And you know what was fucked up was that up until maybe like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was really no way to find out. If you didn't have it charted somehow, which you probably didn't, then there's no way to know. I think it was probably more rare than common for it to be laid out all the way back to figure out where you were from in Africa because of the systemized, you know, destroying of the culture that occurred through slavery. So now there are ways you can figure it out with these different genetic tests. And, you know, we're not sponsored by any of them, but I think it's a cool thing to do if you don't know, to identify that, to bring that home and kind of like complete the loop of how you got here. Just to be able to know. It's interesting. History is so fascinating and it tends to repeat itself. So knowing about where you came from can only, you know, be cool information to move forward with.
And you find out some, you know, I did mine, and you find out some very detailed information too. It's crazy. But anyway, we need to go deeper on this topic. You know what I mean?
Right. Hopefully we can get, you know,
maybe next week.
Right. I would love to. This is something I could talk about all day.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we up out of here. You want to wrap it up with something, Sean?
You know what?
Refresh a hot 16?
I'm going to work on that for the next one.
All right.
We'll see you next time, guys.
All right, we out.